Welcome to the Into the Wilderness podcast. We've now returned from the Northern Shooting Show, and currently, as this goes out, we are in Finland, so a little bit further away from home.
The Northern Shooting Show was simply awesome. I don't know where the 2 days went because they went past like lightning.
It was, but it wasn't like when we go to shows. Sometimes it's not stressful, but it's like your mind is just dead by the end of the day because often we have so many meetings and that. But the Northern Shooting Show wasn't like that.
It was a little bit more relaxed,
way more relaxed than we're not.
And we got to meet a lot of you guys.
So thank you to loads of you that came up and said you loved watching either the series or listened to the podcast. And hello to any of the people that we signed up at the show to listen to the show. Welcome. This is your first new show. Potentially a new show.
We had the premiere of the next film that you're going to see out from us, which is In Search of Reverence, and it premiered on the big screen in the main hall of the Northern Shooting Show this weekend. And on the first day, on the Saturday, it was pretty cool because it came up, and then the sort of main entrance around the main door just kind of ground to a halt.
Yeah.
And there was all these people standing around looking up at the main screen to watch the film. So hopefully we'll be able to bring that to everybody soon, just as soon as it's finished in the film festivals.
But yeah, no, awesome. Big thanks to Richard and Paul for
helping us out
and putting on an awesome show. And it's going to be great again next year. It was very busy this year.
Yeah, it was very busy. We were on the Scottish Association for Countrysports, the sponsor of this podcast. We were on like the second part of their stand. They had a main stand right opposite Blaser in the middle, and then we were on a separate bit that just had sort of our podcast
with our
stuff.
Friends from the Stalker's Dream.
Yes, we did. Friends from the Stalker's Dream were right next door to us, and opposite us was a live debate stage, which is in fact what you're going to be hearing today.
Yes. So you will be hearing. We'll have to say the guests because we actually didn't catch the very first bit where they introduced themselves. But luckily, when Byron is going through the people, he references their first name. So we'll go through their names before we start the show, and then everybody knows who they are and what they're involved in. Mm-hmm. And then when Byron introduces their first name, you'll know what voice you're listening out for. Apologies for the audio for this podcast. I wouldn't say it's the worst we've had, but it's very difficult. We were struggling a bit with the trade-off between being loud so the audience could hear and interference. So if you can hear a bit of a high-pitched noise now and then, that's interference. If it sounds a little bit hollow, that's because we were outside. It's almost unavoidable. It is live. It's almost completely unavoidable. But
you can hear everybody, and there's some really great debate across a whole variety of topics. I'm not even going to list them off because we covered so much. And
it'll be in the title of the show.
It will indeed be in the title. We did it over both days. So this is the first day on Saturday. We did it again on Sunday. So in 2 weeks' time, you're not going to hear that. You're going to hear a different podcast that we recorded last week with Louise Gray, who is the author of The Ethical Carnivore. So maybe go and pick that up and have a read before you get to the podcast. Yeah, probably a good idea. And then 2 weeks after that, you're going to hear part 2, which is, I say it's part 2. It's a completely different panel.
Don't skip over it just because it's the Northern Shooting Show and you think, it might be similar to the one I've just listened. It's completely different because different guests, different day, different audience, different topics.
Yeah, so it's like starting afresh.
Yeah.
We have a winner from the competition which we ran 2 weeks ago, which was to win a reloading manual from Hornady reloading manual. Everybody should have one if you are a reloader. And we had a ton of entries because you guys like to enter picture competitions.
Yeah. Not only on Facebook, but also on Instagram. So thank you. I saved them all on Instagram. I was getting tagged left, right, and center. It was pretty crazy. And on Facebook was the same. There was some fantastic entries.
It was hard. We've just spent ages looking through them all to try and decide.
This is probably the highest caliber of pictures we've had, like lots of really good pictures we've had for any competition we've done. So it's made it very, very difficult. That's why the next competition we're going to talk about in a minute is also going to be a picture competition, because we want people to re-enter some of the pictures to win. So we'll start off with the winner, and where was it? I need to find it now. I've completely lost it.
It was in the Welsh Hills.
It was in the Welsh Hills. I will find it in a second. No, I cannot find it. Was it? I will find this while Byron... I found it now. Okay, Kane Pickering. And out with his brother in the Welsh Hills. Congratulations, you've won the Hornady Reloading Manual.
It was a very cool picture, but also the level of photography of the picture was also very high, as well as being in an awesome place, so well done. Yeah,
so there's a few other mentions that we'll mention a few of you guys, because the pictures have been absolutely brilliant. Is it Aaron Rainey? Aaron Rainey.
Defender, well done, defender. Soft spot.
Luke Dale, also a really cool picture of your camp. Doug Smith, you try to sway us there with a picture of our home turf of Loughley. Who else we got that's exceptional? Dave Brooks, awesome picture of, I think it was bow hunting carp in the USA. That was also up there with potential winner. James Adamson, you were also up there with potential winner with a picture of a killer whale, which is pretty epic.
You hadn't, just for the people listening, it wasn't a hunted killer whale. No, it was a picture of him standing with a killer whale breaking the water.
Yeah. Bo Hunter. I'm not sure if that's actually your real name or you've just named yourself on Facebook Bo Hunter, which is quite cool in a way. But anyway, you as well have been exceptional picture. And Ruin Bester. The list can kind of go on. That's what I'm saying. The caliber is
it's
so
almost
high.
Like every second one we're going to have to shout out. So yeah, you all did an awesome job. There's going to be another competition running for this show. It is to win a set of Smith Optics shooting glasses, but these ones are actually a little bit different to the ones that we've been giving away in previous shows. These are, the most expensive ones that we've been giving away because they have interchangeable lenses. Mm-hmm. All the other previous features, the ballistic protection and tinting and lifetime warranty and all that good stuff, except you can also change the lenses for this one. So worthy prize.
It's going to be another picture competition on Facebook and Instagram. Same rules as last time, and we just want an outdoors picture. That's all we asked for. And by the variation of pictures we got before, you guys all nailed it. And me and Byron have said that because the caliber is so high, that we will allow, if you didn't win last show, you can re-enter the pictures that you put in before. It's going to be tough. We might actually have to bring in an external judge, I think.
Maybe,
because it's getting too tough for the two of us.
A big shout out, although we did it 2 weeks ago, just to everybody who contributed to our chimpanzee funding cause, which was to raise £660 to house and feed a chimpanzee for a year, which was a cause brought forward by Ivan Carter in his podcast from a good few weeks back now. If you are one of the many listeners who hasn't listened to that yet, then go and do it. I think it was during a period of time when a lot of people were on holiday, and you've probably got a little bit of catching up to do. Yep. But it's a great podcast, and that's where that cause came from. It came from that interview with him. And we reached our total. So thank you so much. I
think we've actually gone beyond
We've gone just beyond it. And we had a last few donations in the last couple of days.
Everybody that was handing us cash at the Northern Shooting Show, it was greatly appreciated. And yeah, we got pushed over the target by Toby. It's Toby Angel, I think.
So thank you very much, Toby. Well, to everybody, but Toby was the last donation which pushed us over the edge now. So we've got the money. We actually wanted to send it this week, but we are just about to jump on a plane to Finland. So when we get back in a week's time, we will just collate the amount, let everybody see it, and then we will send it over to Ivan Carter's cause to the Loiru Sanctuary.
We'll keep the chimpanzee donation on our website until we send the money, and then we're going to be taking it off the website. And then from then on, you can donate directly to
Ivan Carter or Raindrop Initiative. Google Ivan Carter, you'll find a way.
Yeah.
And I think that's about it.
Yeah,
It's it's an interesting show, and for a change, you've got a lot of people to listen to, not just us and one guest.
Yeah. Oh, but we were having massive compliments from the last show.
Yes, we were. Yeah, which was really great because it was slightly off topic from the kind of thing we normally discuss, but we've been amazed how many people have listened to it, and amazed how many, as Daryl said, the amount of comments that we've had off the back of it, which is brilliant.
Mm-hmm. I'm very pleased, and I've just shared it in a few farming places, so maybe they'll learn a few things or two.
Yeah, we might have to do some more, slightly more agricultural-based
it's
interviews.
You know what's really nice is that this is probably the most heavy agricultural show that we did the last show I'm talking about, and the response we had has been absolutely phenomenal. Everybody learning something. Even our cousin in New Zealand messaged us literally within a few hours of it going up because of the time difference. He obviously listened to it during the night or something, or during our day, our night, his day, and he messaged us saying that he found it absolutely fascinating about
the hefting of the sheep.
Yeah.
So there you go. If you don't know what we're talking about, that means you haven't listened to the show 2 weeks ago, so go check it out.
Yeah. So we're going to leave you for now, and if you are commuting, which we found out that a massive amount of you are listening to this on the commute, drive safely.
Yeah, definitely. This show is supported and brought to you by the Scottish Association for Countrysports. You will be hearing Alex Stoddart, the director of SACS, in this podcast. He is one of the panelists. So you'll be able to find out a little bit more about him.
Introduce all the people on the show, I just remembered.
I'm going to introduce all of them now.
Okay.
The guests for our panel, in no particular order, are Dom Holtham, the editor of Rifle Shooter magazine, Patrick Gilbraith, editor of The Shooting Times, Sarah Reed, she looks after events and training for the National Gamekeepers Organisation, Alex Stoddart, who is the director of SACS, and Rachel Carey, who's a shooter and has a strong presence in the UK shooting community. Recorded for our podcast, which is Into the Wilderness, which you can find on any podcast app. So if you need to walk away and go see the rest of the show, you'll at least be able to listen to the discussion at a later date. So yes, welcome to our panel to the Into the Wilderness podcast. Thank you very much for joining us. I think the only person who's been on before is Alex. So the rest of you are all new, so fantastic. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. We've got a whole array of topics that we're going to kind of mull over, muse over, and debate, talk about, ramble, in Dom's words. I don't think we'll get them all covered today, but as a starting point, I wanted to talk about the reintroduction of non-native species. So up in Scotland, there is discussion right now, and not just Scotland, over the border into England, the reintroduction of lynx. We've had beaver studies on the west coast and the illegal reintroduction of beavers actually very close to where we live. So I'll just get your thoughts about reintroduction of these species, and sort of encapsulated by rewilding, which we hear a lot about in our media and press. So Patrick, maybe I could just start with you and just see what your opinion is on the reintroduction of these species which are no longer there. I mean, where do you draw the line? Do we draw the line at wolves?
I think it's very important. If you read the national press, you see a huge amount about it in papers, people like George Monbiot and papers like The Guardian. And it's a hugely romantic notion. I was having a conversation with Patrick Laurie, who some of you might know from his Black Grouse reintroduction programme in Dumfriesshire, and he said to me that he himself gets a little carried away with romantic notions of reintroduction, but then sort of actually takes a seat back and talks to people about it who work on the land and aren't perhaps reading these papers and are actually there, and then thinks that it's not as good an idea as it might seem. I think there's that constant thing between practicality and romanticism, and it's a very fine line and one that we have to get right.
Sarah, yourself?
Yeah, well, I personally have a view of it that there's an awful lot of species in this country that are already struggling as it is, and to introduce an extra apex predator like the lynx, I personally don't think it's the right way to go forward. We've met with the Lynx Trust a couple of times now, which has been really interesting to understand how it is supposed to work, because obviously gamekeepers working on the ground want to know a bit more if it is to go forward. And things like lynx are obviously, their top prey item is the deer, and that's what they're thinking, it's to help to control deer populations. And in my mind, I just can't see it working with the farming that we've got in this country. Very small country compared to the vast areas in Germany and places like that where obviously it's worked. I can't see it working in this country, in England. So they've got a few sites. They've looked at Norfolk and Kielder and places like that. But personally for me, and the keepers, certainly doesn't seem to be going down very well at the moment. So
yeah, we've actually, for those people who want to know a little bit more about lynx, we did a very long podcast with the Lynx Trust. It's about 2 hours long actually, with Dr. Paul O'Donoghue, which you can listen to, and you'll hear exactly from the man himself about what their plans are. But it's something which it doesn't feel like they've necessarily consulted very well with the people who it's really going to affect, which I think is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, the farmers, certainly. I mean, they're talking about a compensation pot that will be for farmers, available for farmers if they lose stock. If that's what they're talking about already, then they must foresee a few issues there. And we have to look at the end of the... If there's a way to control... If there's problems with links, are there ways to control it in the future?
Yeah, which is key.
Yeah.
Control it. Don?
I was going to say, you said about Germany and the reintroduction of predators there. A colleague of mine who works for one of the hunting magazines in Germany wrote an article for us and said actually in a lot of places it hasn't worked, especially with the wolf populations, because as you say, the impact on farming, they cannot keep them out of farming stock and they will access the easiest prey, and a farm environment is a much easier prey species than wild deer in open country, and there's a big difference I think between introducing a kind of a species further down the food chain and a major apex predator. So perhaps we should have a bit of a closer look at some of the data, disastrous impact on stuff like mouflon in Germany, and maybe think twice before we do it, because you can't put the genie back in the bottle very easily.
No, that's very true. And what you say about mouflon is absolutely correct. I think I was having a discussion with the same person, Nina, who writes for your magazine, and mouflon, which is a sheep, has basically disappeared in some of the forests there, where they've reintroduced lynx, but that's not a story that gets told here. And from my point of view, the key is tell the truth about what you're doing. Don't hide anything, and then at least we can make informed decisions. Alex?
I think many of you know my views on rewilding, but it's important that we have a debate that's based on evidence and transparency, and so far we haven't had that. There's been a lot of emotive positioning from organisations who may be more interested in fundraising than and the self-preservation that comes from that, rather than the actual outcome itself. So rather than focusing on individual species to start with, my mind would be far more interested in dealing with a landscape scale development plan that may or may not include certain species to be introduced in the future, reintroduced in the future. Without that strategic view, I don't think we should be touching with a barge pole, because we're introducing another variable into our already very complicated environment that we really can't handle.
Just before I get to Rachel, can everybody hear okay outside? You're able to hear what everyone's saying? Great. Rachel, I'll just sort of leave the last word with you on what sort of your personal view is on reintroduction of species like that.
So first of all, going back to what the guys started with, it's a really romantic, quite exciting idea. Lynx used to be in this country. It's quite an exciting thing to think, oh yeah, bring them back. But when you start scratching the surface and actually looking, and I've looked to try and find data where they've reintroduced lynx, like in Germany, and the one line that kind of kept cropping up was, yeah, it's worked, but farmers have been compensated, which tells me that, yeah, it may have worked, but it's also caused a lot of problems. Might excite me, but it's not going to excite the farmers, is it, who are actually living and working the land and making their money, from the land, who it's going to affect the most. So, and there's not really very much data, as in numbers of fallen livestock and problems that lynx have actually caused out there. So until I'd see some solid data from those countries, I'd have to say, they really need to sit down and look, and look at the livelihoods it's going to affect first.
Yeah, I think we've got a lot of species in this country which probably need attention first before we look at reintroducing other species, would be my opinion.
I think yeah. Also, just to finish what I'm going to say, I think also you've got to look at how long that lynx haven't been in this country, and of course the landscape, the environment's changed and reacted, to not having those predators here.
1,300 years.
And it's, exactly. And we've got this, we've got the largest population of deer in the country at this time. But I'm friends with quite a lot of, professional deer stalkers. We're responding to that, and we're getting a great, source of that. We've got venison coming from that. If we reintroduce lynx, we lose a lot of that. Do that. It works.
Alex, do you know what the population would have been in Scotland when the last wolf was killed, which would have been, what, late 18th?
As in the human population.
As in the human population.
It would be a guess, but I can tell you this, it's a lot lower than it is now.
Yeah. Because I wonder if people appreciate the extent to which you're saying populations have changed and population density have changed. You know, bringing an animal back to a country it once lived in, but it's no longer that country in any kind of recognisable form. And that's sort of madness.
And also you need to think about the changes in the way that we conduct ourselves, not just in terms of the modern era and industry itself, and our travel, transport, the A9 and all these things. The farming itself was in many ways nomadic. So low intensity farming where you're actively managing your flocks, you're sleeping with your sheep almost in the pens to protect them from predators. And so that we're a long way away from that mindset. So for a development that it should be sustainable, and also sustainable development should be sustainable, I can't see how this can work. And it's not just lynx, we're looking at other things now, beaver, etc., and all the other things. So it is time for a debate that's based on facts and evidence, so we're all better informed, and we can all as a community make a decision on this together.
Was that were you done there, Patrick? Yeah?
I'm done. Yeah.
Is there anybody standing in the audience who would like to ask a question to the panel, or maybe add something? You can come forward. I can't bring the mic too far out, but anyone got any comments on that? No, all too shy so far. Okay, well.
I think there was one.
Oh, was there one? Did I speak too soon? Do you have any questions for the panel on the reintroduction of non-native species?
Lynx.
Well, any species, but I mean, lynx is what we've been talking about. So please come forward so I can...
Why would you want to reintroduce something that was got rid of for a very good reason?
So just to repeat for the people
We
for
don't
the
want to
recording is
introduce
why
it.
would you want to reintroduce something that hasn't been there for a very long time?
There's a reason why it's not there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's a good point. And talking about the wolf, I mean, the wolf was got rid of because the population was clashing with the wolf. It was an animal that no longer worked, for a growing population. And the population since has obviously grown exponentially. So to reintroduce that animal 300 years on would just be absurd.
Yeah.
Do you understand if it was a certain like a bloating? The way it's a predator that impacts on the human race,
Yeah.
it's bizarre that you'd want them here.
Yeah.
And just to wrap up on this, which I think is what you were saying, Patrick, about deer populations as well, is that I know that of the roe deer that are recorded, and there are obviously more shot which are not recorded in Scotland. Speak of Scotland, I can't remember what year it was in, but it was about 30,000. Now, if you do the numbers based on the statistics that are given by the Lynx Trust, it's basically around 30,000. So obviously that would be split between roe deer and red deer, but it's going to be primarily roe deer because that's more the size spectrum that they like to take. So what does that mean for us as humans, who also need to live in the landscape, who also need to make a living? A lot of that is from professional stalking services. So okay, we will leave that behind and we will move on to something a little bit different, which is the use of technology. Now, technology has been moving very, very fast in all manner of industries, but particularly in the shooting industry, and I'm thinking here particularly of things like night vision and thermal. And my question to the panel is, should we as recreational, well, you can maybe split it if you want, recreational and professional, how should we be using night vision and thermal, and is it necessarily ethical to use it in all circumstances? And maybe I'll just start with you, Sarah. You look like you're poised.
Is this just on deer you're talking about?
I mean, you can touch on... No, I mean, anything, just across the board.
I think it's been a welcomed addition, the technology that we've got today. I think it's very much needed, especially for the professionals who, it's imperative to keep on top of, obviously, a few of the predators, foxes and things like that. So to me, the introduction of the technology has been absolutely brilliant. I don't know, do you?
I think we have to ask the question of where sort of mechanised killing ends and sport sort of starts. So for example, you've got the new Swarovski's the DS, isn't it? The new DS scope, and this scope in theory will move onto the killing point, and you can then crawl forwards 20 yards in the heather, and depending on what the wind's doing, it will then move back onto the killing point. So I said to the guy at Swarovski when we were over in Germany, I said, isn't this just mechanised killing? And he said to me, which was a good point, wouldn't they have said the same thing when they moved from iron sights to scopes? But I still think we need to answer that question ourselves. So I think in terms of pest control, if you're a keeper, these things make sense. So thermal as opposed to lamping. But if you're just out stalking, I think you want as good a day's sport as you can get, and part of that is not making it too easy.
Yeah, it's very objective, isn't it? And like you say, it's between recreational stalkers. I wouldn't want to kind of start using things like that, because it would take away kind of a good 90% of the reasons that I stalk the field craft, you know, the enjoyment, the kind of pitting yourself against something, giving something a chance. So for me personally, but then on the flip side, for the gamekeepers, you know, and people who it's a profession, as Sarah said, it's a really, you know, it's an important tool, because it probably frees up time for them to spend on the estate, perhaps on conservation projects and other things. So it's probably to people who are wanting to, you know, really get on top of predators, welcome technology, but where does it stop? Do we then start messing around, you know, like the Americans have brought all the long range rifle shooting in, and where does it kind of,
that's
where
almost the topic in itself, isn't it? The long range hunting.
Where does it stop? You know, hunting's part, you know, a
Why
big
do you
part
do
of
it?
hunting is being a sports person. Yeah, it's got to be sporting.
Alex, I mean, if we look at thermal in particular, I'm thinking of the use of thermal, which has become really quite affordable and accessible now. For your everyday stalker, you know, we love to hunt. Yes, there's killing, but we love everything that goes into it. That's why most of us go hunting, go stalking. Should recreational stalkers be using thermal if it's for purposes of recreation?
I think in terms of the actual deer management planning itself, when you're looking at your population, what's there, what you want to take off and leave behind, thermal and night vision are another tool to allow you to see in the hours when the deer are active what's actually out there. The law is quite clear, you can't currently use that to control deer. But some of our members feel that's wrong and the law should be changed. Our view is, in terms of recreation stalking, we're trying to actually make the stalk something that's physically challenging and active, and you're pitching wits against a very, very wild quarry. To make it easier like that, I think it's deeply unfair. Now, there may be an argument for wildlife practitioners, contractors, professional stalkers, to have that as a tool available to them for specific circumstances under licence, and that's something that perhaps SNH and Natural England will look at in the future, where you can hit an area quite hard, quite quickly, and then leave it in peace. And that's really what you're looking at in terms of, you know, professional, active, dynamic deer control. But in terms of recreational stalking itself, no. I love gadgets, I love my kit, but I also like traditional walnut and blued metal too. And this is my traditional walnut mentality, is that as a tool for counting and analysing the population, yes. For the shooting itself, no.
In the wrong hands, it could be disastrous. It would have to be, like you say, licensed.
Yeah. It is. That is actually one of my concerns, is that it would, as with anything, it can be abused, and it is very easy for anybody who's used thermal. It is very easy to abuse thermal, especially when it comes to deer, if you're in that mind. I mean, Dom, what's your personal view on it? Do you use it while stalking? Or?
As a spotter, yeah, I think it has a place. I mean,
as a spotter is what I'm talking about.
Let's be honest. You know, people have been abusing lamps for deer for decades anyway, and that's
actually illegal.
It is
without license,
but it is still an effective tool for poachers in order to put deer on the deck. I'm kind of a bit ambivalent from a personal point of view for the kind of the enjoyment of being out stalking. I'm not a huge fan, but from a professional's point of view, from a guide's point of view, if you have pressure to deliver for a client and this is a tool that can help deliver a result for a paying customer, I can see the appeal there. Also, there's a kind of new breed, you know, as the deer population's grown, as the number of stalkers has increased, people who don't have a huge amount of time, they want to go out and they want to get results on the ground, and they might see this as a way to improve their efficiency when they don't necessarily have the time to improve their skills and put in the hours on the floor.
It might mean we don't need to reintroduce links.
Well, quite possibly.
Just put a thermal on everyone.
Just for an example for how useful the thermal tools are, just last week we were stalking muntjac. Ended up going into rough bush just after we shot it, and the thermal is what found it for us. So things like that, it's
very
incredible tool.
That's a very good point. That replaces the need to keep a dog.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So I think that the consensus is that used for the right things, great. Used for management, fantastic. But there's maybe a personal, ethical question about should you really be using it all the time. What about the people standing outside? Has anybody got a view on the use of thermal or technology, where it's taken us? Anybody at all? Rory? Oh, sorry, we've got a gentleman in the front here. No, absolutely, carry on.
Well, technology, you've got the drones, it'll be drone spotting next.
So,
Yeah, where does it end exactly?
say,
Where does
where
it
to
end?
draw the line? Sorry, for the
Shoot
recording.
the drone into your Swarovski, just shoot the rifle in the air and you'll get a kill somewhere. You know?
Well, we could just shoot the drones and there's a spot in itself.
But you as a stalker don't need to choose to use any of the technology, do you? So it's a choice, isn't it?
In some ways, I think it raises good points about creating a code of conduct. I think we need that for stalking, we need that for wildfowling, we need that for all of the sports we enjoy. So I think it comes at quite a sort of appropriate time in a way for us to think about these things and raise these questions.
That's a really strong point.
Yeah.
But it's such a prickly subject, isn't it? The kind of your own personal ethics. What you get out of the sport. You know, how do you feel about big bag days for pheasant shooting? You know, rearing pheasants for sport.
Yes.
You know, it's a real difficult thing. It has to be a personal judgment on. You know,
But it's a
what you feel
conversation. It's a
comfortable with.
conversation, and you get to a sort of conclusion from having these conversations, and it's a good time to have these conversations.
Okay. If there's no one else wanting questions from the... You got some? Oh.
You have to use thermal to get killed. You're doing it all wrong.
So the gentleman in the audience is saying if you need to use thermal, then you're probably doing it wrong. Are you talking about from a sort of a personal, for enjoyment aspect?
Like the gentleman said there, if you've got to find you under pressure to like deliver a kill for them, well, no, that's what you go stop for. It's not wrong.
Yeah, I mean it's a fair point. I mean I understand Dom's point about people being under pressure, and then you've just said that that's not what it's all about. So if the result that you want is a result every time, and to get that you need to use thermal, then are you really hunting for the right reasons, and are you doing it right? It's a very good point.
I think for going back to the original question, for recreational stalkers, no. For perhaps professional stalkers, or to get on top of this, you know, absolutely massive deer population that we've got at the moment, then perhaps.
But again, just arguably, if you don't have a dog, you know, now it's affordable. Should every stalker have thermal in their kit bag? Like the other day, I was stalking with Dom, and I fluffed a shot on a muntjac. Then the guy I was with spent all night looking for that muntjac, found that muntjac, but if we had thermal, we didn't have a dog, we would have found it a lot more quickly than they did. So there's a sort of element of responsibility if it is affordable to have it.
Why didn't you look for it yourself?
I had to get a train.
We've all fluffed shots at muntjacs.
But if we fluff a shot, usually the rule is that you go and look for it yourself.
Okay, nothing else from the audience? No? Okay, next thing. Social media and the hunting, fishing, shooting world. So, positives and negatives. Oh, Dom is scrunching up his face there. Don't worry, Dom, I'm not going to start with you.
No, please don't feel free, but it might be a long rant.
Okay, no, I'm going to start with Rachel here. So, I mean, you probably more than anyone sitting on this panel will have seen the highs and lows of what social media can do. I mean, it is and has been a powerful tool for good and for bad. What's your opinion on it?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's subjective. It depends how you use it. So I've probably one of the first people kind of in the hunting, shooting industry in the UK saw the opportunity to use social media as a promotional tool. So in the early days, when people didn't quite understand it, they thought it was a promotional tool for myself. But in fact, it was more to try and kind of promote shooting. So when I started shooting sort of 8 years ago, the first shooting ground I went to, I was kind of, where are all the women? Where are all the young guys? Where are all, you know, why is there such a massive generation gap? And obviously social media is one of the most powerful marketing tools that we have in modern times, so why not use it? So why not use it to kind of try and make shooting, not just clay shooting, but, you know, shooting, hunting, anything as a whole, more appealing? That kind of snowballed for me into, I was attacked online about 4 years ago for posting a photo of a Chinese water deer that I'd hunted. And I was actually attacked from someone in the shooting fraternity, and his point was, oh, you know, you shouldn't do that, it's damaging for the image of hunting, you know, to post. And I was like, but we're not doing anything wrong, I haven't done anything wrong, why would you want to hide that? You know, I've got up off my backside, I've gone out, I've stalked a deer, I've eaten it, and I'm proud of that fact. I'm proud of I've invested my time, energy, and money and effort and everything into doing what I did. So I really, I'm my dad's daughter, good old Yorkshireman, and rather than kind of take the photo down and hide, I actually responded. Now the response to him, I made sure I put in all of the benefits of what I'd done, and that kind of went a little bit viral and went around the world, and I found a talent in myself, I felt, for being able to speak out. I did feel like people kind of listened to me at first, and I did draw attention because I was female, because I'm blonde, because I'm not your stereotypical, hunting, shooting guy. Everybody back then, if I said to one of my friends, describe a hunting or shooting person, and they'd say, flat cap, whip it, big burly guy, they didn't expect that. So I've used that as kind of a way to promote and encourage people, and that's how I use social media to this day. So I try and make Countrysports appeal to a wider audience, and I reach a wider audience. The other day, one of my dad's friends went to the barber shop in Harrogate, and he came out and he rang my dad and he said, the guys in there were asking me about shooting. They know I shoot. I've been to this barber shop for kind of 8 years. He said, and they asked me about shooting for the first time off their own back, and I asked them why, and they said, oh, well, there's this really hot blonde on Instagram that's making it look cool, so we now all want to have a go. So that to me can only be a positive. If you're reaching wider audiences and, saying the right things, putting the right, the positives, put the good information out there, use social media correctly, it can only be a good thing.
And for fear of not letting anybody else speak, Dom, your take. You're in that world professionally anyway.
Oh yeah, so I'm a traditional print journalist. That's been my entire working life, and it's been a challenge for everybody in my sector to try and work out how we use social media in a way to continue to make a living. Social media has lots of positives. It's a great way to connect everybody, to share interests, to put yourself in touch, to promote your business. But there are some kind of fundamental issues with how it's used, and especially when it comes to hunting. You are effectively your own publisher, whereas if I put something on which is untrue or in the magazine, or defame somebody, or is potentially presents a legal issue, I'm going to lose my job. I am accountable for my actions by the law of the land. You're effectively your own publisher on social media, so you're the person that's making that ethical decision. Do I show this photo of a fox that I've blown up with a 22-250? Do I put that I've shot a giraffe? So these are some of the problems, and of course the anti-brigade, as we know, are looking for any opportunity to jump on negative publicity for shooting. And so this is where some of the areas, I think, need looking at, and we need to be careful, because you're not just representing yourself, you're representing the sport, the wider sport, and Rachel's obviously very responsible about how she goes about it, and she's also got a very powerful voice on social media. Some people don't care, some people aren't interested, some people want to be provocative. So it's how we control it and make people accountable for their actions on social media. I think
a lot of I think we've got to self-police, and I did that a while ago, where I had this rule. So if in my newsfeed in Facebook any kind of gory, disrespectful photo kind of came up I deleted them, because I don't want to see that in my newsfeed, and I can imagine that no one else does. And I actually put it out there to people and said that we need to be responsible, egotistical, blood and guts. It's not hard. If you want to share a hunt that you've been on, it's not hard to show that animal's been shown respect.
It's quite interesting. I don't know if you guys are all aware, but Countryside Alliance running a campaign to stop online abuse. Yeah. So I run the Shooting Times Twitter account. We've got about 25,000 followers. It's a pretty active place. And we see almost no abuse at all because we don't engage with it. We just make our Twitter account a positive place to be. Every week we might get 2 or 3 comments that are trying to provoke a reaction, right from Chris Packham to some guy who's got 43 followers and probably lives with his mum somewhere. But we just don't bother engaging with any of it. It's polls, it's pictures of people's kids training gun dogs, And talking about the anti-brigade, I think online we've got to be very careful not to perpetuate a sort of us and them narrative. We want to, as Rachel was saying, communicate the sort of inclusivity of our world for the future of shooting. That's how shooting will survive.
Yeah, that's that's another really great point about inclusivity. It's something I think we'll get to later, but it's making it relatable. Making what we do relatable to people who don't do what we do.
Yeah.
But
that
the
is
idea
the only way that
a
we will be able
stereotype,
to.
you know, Rachel was saying a stereotype of someone who shoots. Look around you here, you know, we aren't all the same, we aren't all a homogenous bunch, we're not all a homogenous bunch here, and you
They're
guys
all
aren't
wearing
out there and walking
chauffeurs, by
around.
the way. I'm the only one not.
Alex, from an organisational standpoint, you must see this causing issues. It must have caused you headaches, I imagine, at some point in the past.
Yeah, we've
The
had
misuse of it.
We've had a number of social media issues in the past where people who've never met you are quite happy to criticise you, and yet they meet you in person a year later and all of a sudden the best thing ever. Very, very strange. But social media, a lot of common sense have said, can be a very, very positive platform if it's managed correctly. But when it's done negatively, it's worse than anything else in the shooting industry. It is a major threat for the future.
I feel like...
I would actually recommend, as much as Patrick suggested, a code of practice for recreational stalking. Great idea. Maybe even a code of practice for common sense use of social media.
I feel like I could write that. I feel like I'm the most qualified on here to actually sit and write that, because I've seen both sides of it. So I see people, and early on I used to do it myself. I'd engage, you know, someone would comment on my photo, like, oh, you die, and all of this.
Beep, 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 beep.
I'd be like, you know, excuse me, you know, you can't. And what I learned is just delete and block them.
Yeah.
It's so easy. Delete and block them, and I don't want negativity on my page. I want, like you were saying, you want it to be just a positive feed of positive, you know. And I do write quite a lot about conservation and positives and stuff. And that's the way to filter information through. It's not arguing and it's not name calling, it's putting the positives out there. And I found when I did the Jodie Marsh TV show, kind of 80% of people, they just don't know any different. They don't know the information. If you give it to them, they can make their own decisions. And I will say one thing, since I did that show, and I did have two minds about doing it, since I did that show, I've probably not seen an anti-comment on my social media. It's really strange. It's gone quiet. I think I've scared them all off.
I'd like to leave it with a positive note. The work that you guys have done is a cracking example of competent use of social media, where you can see some of the comments from people who may not want to go out and hunt, fish or shoot, but they watch the films or listen to the podcasts, they get what you're doing, why you're doing it, and they make comments, well, I understand now what you're doing, I support your right to do it, I just don't want to go and do it myself. Fair enough.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair enough. And just as a sort of a final word to wrap this up, Sarah?
Yeah, no, I just think it's nowadays we have a duty as hunters, as shooters. If we are going to share our experiences with people, we have to explain exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. And it's not just to go out there and shoot something. You have to tell the picture, tell the whole story for people to understand exactly what we're doing. I personally find Twitter, I run the National Gamekeepers Organisation Twitter feed, so you can imagine we get quite a lot of anti-abuse on there. And we do exactly the same as Shooting Times. It gets deleted and blocked. We don't want to listen to it, because some of the people who are on social media are very extreme, and they come across extreme. They don't really do themselves much favours when you actually read some of their arguments, because they're not really arguments. And we find them
rants,
to be. It's a rant. It's very much a rant, and it's a very emotive subject, isn't it? What we do, but if we just take that little bit of extra time, that when we do post that photo, we put an explanation behind it and say exactly why we're doing it, and I just think that would be so much more powerful. And I think, you know, with gamekeepers, certainly they're getting better at it. I mean, we've got moorland groups and, you know, these different groups of keepers getting together now and sharing what they're doing.
Yeah, be proud.
Because people just don't understand. You know, you just don't. You go up on the fells, you don't understand why someone's setting it alight. But if you put explanations about it,
the amount of kind of even to this day, that vegans, vegetarian, you know, the least likely people you'd ever. And if I could print out all of the messages I could write a book. And it's people who say, we never thought. We think it's, you know, Jodie herself sat there and said, this is actually what you guys do is actually much better than what abattoirs do, or what, you know, people sat talking into, and it's nice. One thing I would like to just put on the end of that, so all of the abuse that I've had from aunties, like you say, it's always in words and it's keyboard warriors and touch wood. I mean, I don't know whether this is the right thing to say, but nothing's ever come of any death threats or threats of violence of mine. The one problem that I have ever had that's turned into something in my life was actually from a fellow shooter. So it's quite interesting, you know.
I think actually we've all got stories about that, whether it's greed or dysfunctionality, not entirely sure, but we are a community that should be working hard to represent and support each other.
Definitely,
and, more of that in the future.
Yes.
What about from the people standing outside? Any experiences that you want to share? Social media, your view on its use, or misuse, or abuse? No? Okay. Well, in that case, I'm sure you do, but you're just too shy. Okay, so we'll move on to the next subject, which I think is going to tie in somewhat with sort of some of the other things that we've been talking about, which is, should there be more of a focus in this country on wild game shooting rather than reared? And you can even throw into that bag limits. This is about the sort of self-imposing best practice, if you like. Patrick, let's start with you.
It's not an issue that I have a sort of set view on. I'm sort of interested in the idea of kind of big bag apologism, if there is such a term. I think if you are shooting, say, a 350 brace day on a grouse moor, if you've got the numbers to do it, you have to have a great team of keepers. You've got to have a healthy population of birds if you're doing it sustainably, and you have to have a very good team of guns. There's nothing wrong with doing that if you can then sell those birds at the end of the day. Personally, my ideal day is a sort of 50 bird day, a mixed species day, probably ending up with some duck flighting in the evening. But I don't think that we should kowtow to a narrative of big bags being awful, because then where does that sort of end? And there are a huge number of people employed by estates who are putting on these big bag days, and if it went the other way and it was kind of one man and his dog walking up a hedgerow, suddenly that industry would sort of flounder and people would be out of jobs.
I mean, Alex, so comparing the emphasis that we put on reared sport, if you want to use that word, or wild game, I mean, what's your opinion on that?
My angle there is the food product at the end. So if you're going to shoot it, you need to eat it. And if you're shooting more than you can actually eat, that's a major issue. So everything should be sustainable. Whatever we do, whether it's pest control or shooting reared game or shooting wild game, it should be sustainable. And I think the fact of having discussion about it is a really, really healthy thing. None of us are ever 100% right, but I think together as a community, we have an open discussion, we can take it forward.
Sarah?
Yeah, no, I agree. If it's all about if the game is going to be eaten at the end of it, I don't have a problem, because I see there's a place for commercial shoots, there's a place for smaller shoots. It all fits in, and it's land use. We're using the land, we're working off the land, there's jobs created. I don't have a problem with
the question, I think, in some ways is not are the bags that we're shooting too big, but how can we get people to eat more game? Because if we can get people to eat more game, it actually sort of makes that first question completely redundant.
Absolutely. It's marketability, isn't it?
Don?
Commercial game shooting, especially in the UK, does raise some fairly difficult questions for us as an industry, because we are introducing vast numbers of an effectively foreign species into our wild spaces. We're feeding them, we're concentrating the numbers, we're treating them for illnesses and diseases which have become endemic within the populations. So it's in some ways quite an easy aspect of our sport to attack. And I think that ability to link what we do with an end product is very important. I think people understand that, people wanting to shoot for food. But I think the kind of we do need to make sure that our ethics and our practices in terms of rearing the birds, that it doesn't become industrial factory farming of wild game.
Absolutely.
Wild game.
I mean, we're big at the moment pushing the code of good shooting practice at the moment. That's something that's big that we want everyone to adopt, and everyone does adopt it. Everyone does follow the code of practice, but sometimes we've just got to push it out a little bit more, and that covers things like that. Stocking rates and.
But in other areas of field sports, we've got, you'd go to a trout farm, quite happily catch a fish that have been reared for sport.
Yeah.
But I think perhaps there's a closer link between taking your catch home for the pot. And I think we do need to make sure that we continue to stress the importance of this product going back into the food chain.
Me and Byron, when we were at an estate earlier in this year, and a prime example of, they obviously saw the birds aren't making a lot of money, and they might not necessarily have enough people to give them to. So what they decided was that all the pheasants would be prepared on site, and they were all given to the homeless shelters in Aberdeen. So, initiatives like that, your food is going somewhere.
Yeah.
Since Daryl's mentioned it, we should probably actually just mention it. It's Glenfiddich Estate. John Mackenzie's the head keeper there, and that was his own brainchild. He put it to his boss, and he said, "Absolutely, look, we're basically getting no money for."
What a great good news story for shooting as well.
Yeah,
it's something.
fantastic.
There are loads of stories like that going on, but nobody knows about them.
Yeah.
So I think
they sort of need to be
off the back of that-
concentrated, I think, as well. These stories kind of pop up from time to time, and little projects are launched, but they never seem to really kind of break through in a way that they should. When food bank use is at an all-time high.
It really doesn't help that when anti-shooters see the story, they say, "Oh, they can't even get rid of it. They're just giving
that is
it
a problem.
away." And for them to turn that good story, a news story about donating game to homeless people, for them to turn it round into a bad thing, to me just shows how extremely.
Sometimes you can't win though. That's the problem.
Can't.
But saying that, I mean, the example I gave there of the state giving to the homeless shelters in Aberdeen. There's another example of the Anglis Glens Merlin Group. Just before Christmas, they decided we're going to do hampers all paid for, worth, I don't know, £30, £40 each, to make sure that every person that needed a Christmas meal around the area got one. And they actually struggled to get a charity to take the game meat, and there was various reasons that were not good reasons. One being that the risks involved in cooking game meat. What risks? And eventually they found a charity in Montrose that covered the whole area, that took the entire lot, and that meant 100 people got Christmas dinner, and they bought the vegetables and the game all prepared with menus and how to cook it. And these are little initiatives that the shooting industry is doing that might not necessarily the rest of the world knows.
I think you just said it right there when you say what risk with game meat. Just so much more needs to be done to educate people and to encourage more consumption of game meat. I'd love to see not just a fad when you go into a supermarket over Christmas. I'd love to see a lot more game on supermarket shelves, and the only way to do that is to sell what we do more to the public, to sell this idea of look, it's sustainable, it's ethical,
healthy.
Going back to what Dom says, is it good for the image of shooting to have mass amounts of birds out? There's kind of very little data out there to show that mass release numbers of pheasants are affecting, if anything, it helps wild bird populations, because they also feed the wild birds when they feed the pheasants. So to me, I think sometimes it can be a bit of a class war, but within shooting. So someone who can't necessarily afford to go on a 500 bird day, 300 bird day, 100, whatever, it can sometimes be a bit kind of spiteful toing and throwing. Me personally, there's a place for both. I've been on a 350 bird day. I've been on a walked up day where I've shot 2 pheasants. Both days were absolutely equally as enjoyable to me for different reasons. I'll do anything pigeon shooting, wildfowling. It all has its place. We just need to make sure it's sustainable, good practice is followed. The commercial estates are needed. They provide, much of the kind of 2.whatever billion it is that shooting brings into the economy. One of those is the big commercial estates. We're bringing in, tourism, people from outside of the country. They don't have driven shooting in many other countries as we are able to put it on our landscapes and our fantastic estates that we have. It's always been, pheasant shooting in this country really has always been from a commercial standpoint, because it was brought about in order to keep the estates alive. They had to, bring in it as a land use to pay, for the land to pay its way. So I don't think we should poo-poo it. I think we should just, as I say, work on making sure. I mean, I've never been to a game estate where they can't place and sell all of their pheasants to go into the food chain. I know right now the game's not selling, for the best money, but it still ends up at a game dealer's. So let's work together at encouraging, more use of game meat
wild
on a
meat
wider
or something,
scale.
yeah.
I think there's an angle there for also making the actual processing side of it more accessible. Cooperatives, shoots working together to actually process game.
Yeah.
And one of the best sausages that anybody will eat, apart from goose sausage, is a pheasant sausage.
They're cracking.
Or pheasant burger. So if you can provide that for people, then you've got something that's really easy to cook at 8 o'clock at night. You just come back from the office. So.
I mean, is there, Alex? Do you think that there is, if we take the personal responsibility approach as a shooter, so you go to, if we want to call it a big bird day or a big bag day, should there be a personal responsibility on that shooter to actually at least have the conversation? How are you processing? Because one thing's sure as hell sure, you're not taking all those birds home yourself. Most of the shooting that I do, and my brother does certainly, although we do kindly get invited to the odd driven shoot, is walked up rough stuff, and everything gets divvied out at the end of the day, either to us or...
one bird.
Sometimes
And it's
there's
in about
more.
1 million pieces.
So you know that everybody who is killed that day is either taking home something they saw somebody kill, or they're taking home the stuff they killed themselves. Whereas on the big bag days, or even 100, there's a limit to how many pheasants you can eat. You're probably taking home a brace because there's a limit to what you can process yourself. Is there a responsibility personally as a shooter to at least take the time to find out where it's going?
There's an ethical responsibility there in everything we do, and definitely the other thing is if you can't take a brace home for yourself, because you're flying out somewhere the next day, make sure you pass it on to somebody else. So that is then and process it if you possibly can. Plucking pheasants isn't that difficult. So ducks is, but it's different. But the challenge there is to really get it into people's minds that this is a very accessible foodstuff. It's very tasty, and we should be eating more of it.
There's a few of the game estates where I go to that give you a really nice kind of bag, and it has a recipe, it has maybe a little chutney in there or something that goes with the pheasant, and it literally encourages you to go straight home that night and cook it. So, more estates could perhaps be encouraged to do that, more recipe cards. I know Basque are doing the taste for game and everything. So just more emphasis on like we say, essentially pheasant, large scale pheasant shooting is really, really, really great free range chicken rearing, isn't it? It is. Yeah. And it's so much more healthier. So let's encourage people to want to eat more of it.
2 more topics and then we're going to wrap up. Women in field sports. Now, without going over kind of any of the stuff that we kind of already covered with yourself, Rachel, which is probably one of the good examples of that. But if I start with you, Sarah, there's definitely been a rise in females in field sports in the last few years. We've seen it in the States much more so, but it's coming through here. Why do you think that is? And is that... It's obviously a good thing to have more people in, but has there been anything negative off the back of it?
No, not at all. I don't think anything. It can't be seen as negative at all. But what I think Rachel answered it before. It is the social media. I really do feel it is. I mean, with the introduction of Femme Fatales and Chelsea Gun Club and things like that, people are getting more involved in it. And once you get them, say you get a lady out clay shooting, you start introducing, and they get, they meet new people and start getting introduced to the stalking side and game shooting, and they get into it that way. And so I think that's a brilliant way. And then you've got a lot of the organisations are doing great initiatives with ladies shooting and young shots and things like that, and getting youngsters into the sport, into the industry is absolutely brilliant in my eyes.
I think it is immensely positive, but I don't think that there are no negatives. I've shot with girls for much of my life. I wouldn't have thought it at all odd at school if we were at a party and half the guns were girls. I was doing an interview the other day for Shooting Times with Nicholas Soames, and he said, why are we even having this conversation? I've shot with girls all my life. And there's a slightly patronising tone, I think, now. Magazines, not us, but magazines are doing sort of like the ladies shooting special with the ladies shooting kit, and look, there's a lady on the peg,
and it's pink,
it's pink. Of course, it's pink. And then gun companies are launching guns, and fair enough that the cone might be a little bit higher, but then they're launching these sort of purple advertising campaigns. They're just girls who shoot. They're just guns. They're just people who shoot.
We call it shrink it or pink it.
Yeah,
that's how.
But to me, success will be when actually we stop talking about, oh my goodness, it's a girl on the peg.
They are hunters.
Just somebody else.
I wrote a piece for the Field the other day, and they asked for a top tip, and that's one of the points I made. don't make the focus on being female. When I go shooting, it actually annoys me if they kind of make special, treat me differently or special. I like shooting with the boys, I like shooting the boys. I like getting my hands dirty. I don't want to be a huntress. I'm a hunter. That's it. I'm not, a lady shot. I'm a shooter. There shouldn't be. Shooting's one of the probably only sports where men and women can compete on an equal level. There's kind of, look at Cheryl Hall. She kicks most of the men's asses. But sorry, you'll have to put another beat.
That's all right. It's fine.
But the point is, you can compete on the same level.
No, but it is a really good
don't
point. We are quite exceptional in that we can do that, and that's something that we should sort of
It was a bit of
celebrate.
naivety, I think, from the industry, because we've had this sudden upsurge and everyone's kind of running around like headless chickens trying to know how to respond. We need products, and it does go back to the shrink it or pink it. Now, if I buy anything that's to fit me and it's got pink on, I get the old black Sharpie out and it gets kind of rubbed out because I don't like pink.
It was quite sad that a few years ago, so it was an advert, one of the shooting magazines with one of the big cartridge manufacturers, now owned by a foreign company. They had pink cartridges.
Yeah,
and as soon as I saw that, I just thought, for F's sake, what are we doing? This is not the way forward.
Perhaps to appeal to the younger girls, little girls who and let's not be anti-pink because some girls
There are other colours available.
Just let's not kind of think that you've got to paint everything pink.
Byron likes pink.
Girls.
You see my boxes.
We've got a good friend from Norway, and she wrote a blog post about it. And she's been hunting her entire life, and before the kind of upsurge of more female hunters, she wrote a good blog post about. I think the title was "I carry your own rifle," and she refuses to let anyone carry anything for her just because they think she can't because she's a woman in hunting.
I get this so much.
I do a lot of loading, and you'll be surprised at how many guys you're there to load, aren't you? You carry the kit.
Yeah, and they
you
want
carry
to
the kit, and everyone's like, "Oh no, you can't carry that," and I'm like, "This is my job."
But essentially, I think what we're all saying is that it's great that more women are shooting and that the shooting community is starting to think about it, but we need to kind of come up to date. We're sort of doing women in
Treat
sport,
everybody equal.
but 20 years in the past.
Yeah.
You need to sort of stop mansplaining as it's,
But I do think the clubs that are out there have done a fantastic job at
yeah.
getting into it.
No, I think they have, but I think it has to be done in the right way, and I don't think we're quite doing it in the right way.
Yeah. The reason why I co-founded Femme Fatales with Lydia, who's marketing for Gamebot, I don't actually have anything to do with the running of the club. It was and the only reason we kind of started the club. I get a lot of ladies who, how we've seen what you do, we'd really like to have a go at shooting, and I used to pass them on to Chelsea Bun Club. Now Chelsea Bun Club's branding is pink and very feminine, which is but it is it is a nice and obviously appeals to a hell of a lot of women because the club's done so well. But a few, there's obviously a niche market there as well, because a few women came back and went, it's all a little bit pink and girly for me. I kind of like what you do. It's kind of looks badass and cool. So we developed Femme Fatales, and that's how we branded it. We did the kind of cool, the cool appealing to, women who liked the other side. But the point is, both of those clubs now kind of cover every demographic of women that there are in the UK. So the net's widened. So there is a place for for both.
And Dom, how's your pink wardrobe?
It's comprehensive, actually. I do like a terracotta and a salmon from time to time. I work in an office full of lady shooters. I'm the only guy on the team of the magazine on the editorial side. So it's nothing out of the ordinary to me. I'm not critical of the industry actually for launching specific products in the same way as if I was going to buy a product for my son, I'd want to buy something that was the right size, the right weight, that fit him and his physique. I'm not critical of the industry as a whole to introduce more female specific products. I think that's to be applauded, whether it's the cut of the clothes or the way they design the guns to be better for female shooters and to allow them to shoot more comfortably. I think in Europe, interestingly, where they have 15 or 20% of people taking the hunting qualifications are now female hunters. But when Housegun launched their new range of custom moderators where you could choose any colour of anodising, the most popular colour is, Rachel?
Pink.
Correct.
It's there's a place for both, isn't there? There is a place for things.
Scandinavia, apparently. Yeah.
They're like all turning into pinkists.
So, last topic, which is maybe on a more serious note, possibly. The future of deer management and recreational stalking in the UK, particularly up in Scotland, we're hearing a lot of talk and conversation from government about where the direction that they're wanting to take our deer management. We've just had reports recently out, and it doesn't necessarily make for very comfortable reading for people who have been involved in it for a very long time, and it's not necessarily the what we might see as the correct direction. So if I can start with Alex on this, maybe just to give an overview and an opinion of where we're sitting and what the potential future holds for us in Scotland, but that is equally applicable, in England as well.
I think the review that's conducted recently was blown out of all proportion, and actually, given that the evidence base we're working from, the few years that deer management groups had to change track, weren't long enough, that the actual review itself was incompetent. But it had to be done because that was the process the Scottish Government wanted to be seen to be done at the time. I hear an awful lot about the fact that there are too many deer in Scotland. Well, there may be in certain localised areas where you've got local abundance, but in many areas you've got too few deer. And the sustainable deer management isn't just about going out there and shooting deer. Sometimes it's about going out there and actually saying we're not going to take too much of a cull this year because the numbers are too low. We are concerned that a number of NGOs out there, as in charities, conservation charities, are over-culling for their own political purposes. Deer are a native, red and roe deer, native species. They deserve our respect. They may very well have been here long before us, and it's sickening to me to see the way that they're actually being treated. We are very keen to drive forward a position in Scotland where deer are actually regarded as an equal to us. They have a place in the landscape, as do we, and it's time that we stop treating them as pests. And I'm very, very cross with the way that certain people in the media portraying the current deer review. Lowland sector roe deer slightly different. It is time for a fresh approach, and we are great proponents. I've been proponents in 1997 about this, about getting more public land out there available in terms of stalking, recreational stalking for local people. So if you've got public land local to you, my view is that's a wild resource that should be used by local people should they wish to have it.
Yeah, we have an incredible. I can speak for Scotland, which is where I live, but we have an incredible resource, which in almost any other part of the world would be heralded as an amazing conservation triumph. Is what we have there. We have healthy populations and great numbers, and yet it seems to have been turned on its head. Sarah?
I fully agree with both yourself and Alex. It's criminal how they're treating, how some of the review and people are taking the review are seeing deer as. It's absolutely disgraceful that we are seeing an animal that belongs there. It's been there for a long, long time. That we don't see that as it's such a valuable animal to Scotland, to the economy, to the environment, and for them to be trying to see them as such a bad thing and the way they treat them, I just think is absolutely disgraceful. And it's happening in England as well. And we're getting groups saying that there's far too many and they need to be culled. They need to be culled harder. I just think it's an absolute
to make way for people.
To make way, yes.
Which,
yeah,
but Alex does make a very good point, is that there needs to be a balance, is that we humans and deer, we live in the same landscape. Yeah. So yes, obviously they do need culled, but there's negative connotations when it comes to deer.
Absolutely,
Patrick?
I agree with Alex as well. I think talking about it as a sort of community resource and how I think it's a good way to get more people involved in the sport. It's something that people are very aware of, and red deer particularly such a sort of iconic animal. And if we can get people involved in stalking and in deer management through stalking and through, I think that would be a very good thing.
Rachel?
Yeah, just.
I know you like to stalk.
I do, yeah, and it is a shame that, we know we've got the highest deer population that we've ever had, I think, as the figure goes, but that doesn't mean we need to kind of start running around like headless chickens, you know, and put in huge cull numbers and treating them almost kind of like an industrial, you know, like a pest. You know, they're an iconic species, specifically, obviously, to Scotland. They do bring in a lot of tourism revenue, and if we've got more of it, then we should be doing more to promote that and to bring more people in and make stalking available to more recreational stalkers, you know, open the estates, do more to create more opportunities for people to get into. Not just the kind of taking of a deer either. It'd be nice to see more more emphasis put on management, so surveying and all, you know, everything that's involved in management of deer, not just the kind of, you know, come and shoot one. I'd like to see more education initiatives available that's not so kind of daunting, maybe in bite size. I've got the Deer Initiative manual, you know, the big one that you get for £20. It's brilliant. It comes with kind of laminated pages and it fascinates me, but it's something that myself as a recreational stalker, I don't kind of get the opportunity to go and put into place. So there's commercial opportunities for people to create perhaps deer management courses, but small bite-sized ones for recreational stalkers.
Just a question, and this is something to ask you all. Do you know the qualifications you were talking about in Germany? Mm-hmm. Do you think there's a place for that in the UK at all? Something similar? I mean, I'm not saying it. I just
just explain that qualification, Dom, before for those people who don't know.
Most European countries have to pass a hunting exam in order to be granted permission to own a firearm and to hunt. And of course, in the UK, it's a voluntary system. You know, there are some great qualifications. DSC, there's 20,000 people now have done the DSC course. That's purely voluntary. I think the problem, any organisation that proposes in order to hunt in the UK, you must do this examination, is going to come in for some fairly serious flack from the shooting fraternity, because, you know, we face enough obstacles to get our guns. I think at the moment, a voluntary scheme is probably all we're going to be able to get away with. But anything that shows that we are a responsible sport and that we're doing everything we can to make sure we hunt ethically and that we are well trained presents the sport in the right light.
It would perhaps be something that came if they did open, you know, kind of run similar schemes to New Zealand, America, where they did open public land, where you would have to show a level of competence. You know, not anyone can just sling a rifle on the back and go out there. So it might be something that's brought in as statutory.
Public land in certainly south of the border is just, you know, we don't have enough of it here.
I think in many ways it's a good thing, and it's like what you're saying is that there's a kind of idea in this country that if you shoot, it's, you know, someone has had to show you how to shoot, like your father or whatever. If you're just a member of the public who doesn't come from a shooting background, who wants to get into shooting, how do you learn all these things? How do you know how to prepare a carcass, right down to, you know, what you do when you half shot a pheasant and it's running across the ground? I think courses and codes of practice would be a very good thing in improving the image of shooting and allowing people to get into shooting.
And of course, buying magazines, Patrick.
Of course, yeah.
There's actually...
To say what you're saying there, Patrick, I think probably what is quite key to what you're saying there is that these are courses where we must be conscious of the fact that we mustn't always direct our messages for hunters, because we already understand, we're already converted, we already buy into it. We need things like that which are accessible to people who, you know,
but if I wanted to
get
into golf, I would go. I'm awful at golf. I have no interest in golf. But if I wanted to get into golf, I would go and do lessons. I would go on a course or something like that. If you want to get into rough shooting, if you want to get into snipe shooting with spaniels,
how do you do that?
It's a bit of a sort of like closed shop, you know. Yeah. By the Shooting Times, and we tell you how to do it.
Which it goes full circle to what we were talking about earlier, going right back to using social media. There's actually a girl stood in the audience, Sophie, I think your name is, who's obsessed with deer, and I follow you on Instagram, and I do, and it's lovely to see, because it's not something you expect, and you're doing deer management and gamekeeping. See, for more young girls, Sophie's, you know, she's pretty, she's enthusiastic, she's so enthusiastic. I like looking at your photos. She takes photos of the deer and they all look really cute, but she's also very versed on the fact that they need managing, and she's got a rifle on her back. And if more young girls and more kind of wides, you know, out there saw this, that's what we need to encourage. We need to encourage this.
Sorry, carry on.
No, it's fine.
No. Oh, sorry, I thought you were just coming to a close. I was just going to say, because I know that people are probably going to need to get away. Was there any last comments from the panel just before I open up to the floor?
I'll just finish off that last bit there. We need to start thinking about deer impacts, not deer numbers. The conservationists talk about that constantly anyway, so it's fine. On the other side, these courses, best practice is a good thing. So more incentivisation and investment best practice. And in terms of mandatory courses, then be careful what you wish for.
Yep.
Because if you think about hunter skill sets, etc., that will become a firearms licensing safety test. So it might be something you want. I don't know. I'll do it with the tax amendment.
It already is to a degree, though. It already is.
Yeah. Talking about deer impact assessment, they've just, I can't remember who did it, there's been a study released where they did 3D imaging and they found that they can now assess, so not only the impacts of obviously where the deer browse, so below, they've actually done it so that in the canopy of the trees, they can see the effect that it's having on songbirds and, so that's obviously something that's being developed. It's in the pipeline.
Use it as a tool,
better damage assessments being done.
Just to close up there, because I'm conscious that people need to get away, is there any questions from the people who are still here? Some of who have been here the entire time, so congratulations. Does anybody want to ask any, it doesn't have to be a last question, any questions at all to the panel?
Just saying about the safety course or a competency course. When I got my licence, I was virtually asked, do you know what you're doing? And yes, I do. But they're sort of assuming that you're not telling a lie or anything like that. In this country where we are so close, there's landed area is small and there are people everywhere. Should there be a more of a course where people have to actually understand what they're capable of doing inadvertently?
Is this prior to owning a firearm you're talking about?
Yeah, when the officer came around and talked to me. When you're getting your first, just at the answer, not necessarily with you or anything like that.
I think at the very least there should just be a short safety test. When I started shooting, I wanted to be safe so much that I voluntarily took myself and did the Basque safe shot, and it cost me £10. And I was more than happy to do that, and I think a lot of people would be more than happy to do that, and it would be good to see, and it'd be good overall for the image of shooting in the media to show that we're self-policing, because it's only a matter of time before they're going to end up, they'll force you to do it, they'll impose it on the shooting industry.
It's being proactive and us actually saying this is what the course should look like, rather than having a course imposed on us which has been devised by someone that knows absolutely nothing about deer stalking or game shooting.
Exactly, beat them to it, and even if it is just as simple as an entry-level safety test for shotgun and rifle shooting in the UK, I'd be more than happy to support that.
And it should be altruistic and not commercial.
Yeah, no, that is key, but proactiveness, I think. We've got a question here. Sorry, carry on, Roy.
So, what does the panel think about compulsory insurance?
So the question was for gun ownership, compulsory insurance for gun ownership.
That's one.
Yeah, if you want, okay, yes, go, yes.
Just one of my things that I obviously pick up on is there's over 300,000 firearms and shotgun certificate holders in the UK.
Yeah, 500,000 shotgun certificate
holders.
holders.
500,000 now.
More, I think 580. I checked.
FACs.
I want to the exact digit.
And to me, for those. So Basque have 110,000, 120,000. We only have 14,000. I don't know about that. 16 and a half. We're not covering them, are we? They're not a member of some organisation. Now, I don't think it's just about insurance to me, but you should have it for the minimum for the insurance. You should. But you're also paying an organisation to represent you and to promote the work you do and hopefully safeguard it, help to safeguard it. And for me, for not being a member of any of these organisations, is just that's where I find the problem.
It's fair, but also if you shoot for long enough, you don't have to shoot for that long until you hear of an accident that has happened. Accidents are rare, but they do happen. And when someone gets shot and no one's insured, it's a disaster. You wouldn't drive a car without insurance, and you're doing something which is potentially very, very dangerous if you get it wrong. So to head out into the field on a driven day with no insurance is pretty mad, I think.
It's not just a shooting accident, it's a spaniel going through a hedge and causing a car accident.
Yeah,
all of a sudden you're looking at something that's region of £40,000, £50,000. It's it's a major life event.
It's a small price to pay for your day's shooting, really, isn't it? To save peace of mind.
Sorry, go Don.
I was going to say, obviously a lot of people shoot only in a controlled environment, be it a playground where there's a kind of corporate liability involved, or on a commercial estate where they again have some umbrella cover for the people that are taking part in that activity. And I think we provide affordable insurance through the magazine, and we encourage people to take it up. And you do wonder if maybe when we're talking about a way to incentivise people to take a safety course, in the same way as if you're a young driver, you could take an extra course and get your premium reduced. That might be a good way to encourage people to take up both the course and also the insurance.
I think just to say, if you're going to think about having mandatory insurance or whatever, and I actually don't support that, but I think voluntary is better. There's a challenge there to the shooting organisations to work better together.
Definitely.
And we need to really grow up. And I think behind the scenes we do actually work well together, but there's a challenge for the future there. And there's potential for, albeit keeping the individual identities of organisations, working far better in open, efficient federation.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think just to reinforce the point that Sarah made just as a closing, and I know that Alex supports this, is that we should be supporting our organisations for the work they do. The insurance is a bonus, but they do a lot of work behind the scenes. Some would argue there should be some stuff that's more public facing, but I think that's something they're all working towards. But the organisations are the people that safeguard what we do, and you should be joining for that reason, and hey, you get some insurance as well. But I think we're going to wrap up there, otherwise we could go on forever. It's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much to everybody who's on the panel. Thank you even more to the people who hung around the whole time to listen and contribute. And we're going to be doing the same thing again tomorrow. But if you want to listen to the show and pass it on to other people, you can find it on iTunes and Stitcher if you don't have an iPhone. And it's also on YouTube and TuneIn Radio. So there's leaflets just behind you if you want to pick up one that's got all the information on you. They're just at the stand there that has the SACT banner. There's some of our podcast leaflets on there, so you can pick them up. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
And that's it for another 2 weeks. We will be joined again with Louise Gray, like we said earlier. And if you want some heads up on the interview, go and buy her book.
The Ethical Carnival.
Yeah, it is on Amazon. I think that's the best place you can get it.
I think that's where we got it from.
Yeah.
Don't forget to enter our competition to win a set of Smith Optics shooting glasses with interchangeable lenses. And as Daryl said at the start, it is going to be another picture competition. Check out our social media feeds, Podcast Into the Wilderness on Facebook, Pace_Brothers on Instagram. And we didn't mention it at the start, but we mentioned it quite a bit. You need to visit our website, which is all the W's, thepacebrothers.com. On there is everything that you could possibly want with regard to what we're up to, including our blog tab with new articles linked to the podcast, and also the shop and our wilderness hunts as well, which are booking up really fast right now. So if that was something you were interested on and you've been kind of mulling it over, you need to get in, because actually we have 3 hunts open and half the places are booked already.
Yeah, with probably enough people to fill the other half as well. Just
inquiries.
So get in there first. Just go to the website. Everything is on there. And also in regards to our shop, I think in fact, an order just came in about 5 minutes ago. We are running out of stock right now, so get it now, and we're going to be reordering very soon.
Yeah, we're going to be doing a bit of a revamp with products as well, so there's going to be some fresh stuff coming in the next few months.
Yep.
I think that's it.
That's it.
We need to go because we're catching a plane. Don't forget that this podcast is sponsored and brought to you by the Scottish Association for Country Sports.